A second type of factoring that we'll use besides undistributing is what we can refer to as a reverse FOIL method. And this is where we're going to break this quadratic equation into two sets of parentheses, both with two pieces in them. So we're going to find a binomial times another binomial that will remultiply to get us back to this original. Now, there's kind of a process that we can go through to get us there. The first thing is we need to see, all right, x squared. What's going to multiply to make x squared? Well, that's going to be x times x. If I was to re-multiply these, meaning FOIL them, use the FOIL technique to multiply these two expressions, first thing I would do is multiply the first piece in each set of parentheses. That's what the F in FOIL stands for. And so we would get back to our x squared. Now, I'm multiplying to make this last number, but then I'm adding to make this number, meaning I need two numbers that multiply to make 10. So my options there are 5 times 2, try that again, 5 times 2, and 10 times 1. But I also need those numbers to add to make 7. So we're multiplying to make the last number, we're adding to make the middle number. And so if we look at our options here, 10 times 1 isn't going to do it for us, but 5 times 2 will add up to make 7. 5 plus 2 makes 7. And so that means I'm going to have plus 2 and plus 5 as my two entries into my sets of parentheses. So if I was to use our FOIL technique to remultiply this, I would indeed get x squared plus 7x plus 10. And so now that I've rewritten it in this factored format, I need to take each of these sets of parentheses and set them equal to 0. Same thing that we did before, because we've got this multiplication problem. X plus 2 times x plus 5 has to equal 0. So it means either x plus 2 has to equal 0 or x plus 5 has to equal 0. And so now I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides. So one of my answers is going to be negative 2. And then over here I'm going to subtract 5 from both sides. So hopefully we can see that we're going to get x equals negative 5 as our second answer. And so we've again found two results by taking each of the pieces of the product, the x plus 2 and the x plus 5, and setting them equal to 0 and solving. For the second example, we're multiplying to make that last number. We're adding to make the middle number. So we're going to be breaking this up into two sets of parentheses. We're going to have x as that first piece in each set of parentheses, because again, if we were to remultiply this, we'd have to arrive at this x squared, so x times x equals x squared. But now we need to figure out what two numbers multiply to make 24, but then also add to make negative 11. So the first thing here is we have to realize that we're multiplying to make a positive, but then we have to have these same two numbers add to make a negative. And so that tells us that both of our numbers need to be negative. The only way I'm going to have both those things happen is if both numbers are negative. A negative times a negative equals a positive, so I'll get this positive result on the number I'm multiplying to make, but a negative plus a negative just makes another negative, and so that's how I'm going to get the negative result here. So now I need to wade my way through the different ways that I can multiply to make 24. So I've got 24 times 1, I've got 12 times 2, I've got 8 times 3, and then I've got 6 times 4. So I have 4 options here. So now I'm looking for the option that will add to make 11. And so hopefully we can see that 8 plus 3 is going to be that option for us, so we can wipe out the rest of those. And then just like it was on the previous question, it doesn't matter the order in which I put the 8 and the 3. Since they're both negative, it doesn't matter if I put the 3 here and the 8 there, or if I flip it around. Because at this point, I'm just going to set each of these parentheses equal to 0. And so if I add 3 to both sides, I get x equals 3. And then over here, if I add 8 to both sides, I get x equals 8. So I've got my two answers, x equals 3 and x equals 8. Moving on to the next example. Now again, I'm going to break this up into two sets of parentheses that are going to multiply to make 0. I need to multiply to make the last number. I have to find two numbers that will multiply to make negative 42. So that tells me that I'm going to have one positive and one negative number. That's the only way I can multiply to make a negative. And then those two numbers have to add together to make that negative 1 that's in front of the x there. So just like on all the others, we're going to have x as the first piece in each of these sets of parentheses. Again, since we're multiplying to make a negative 42, I have to have one positive and one negative. So I've got that set up as well. And so now I have to think through the ways that I can multiply to make 42. Well, there's of course 1 times 42. There's 2 times 21. There's 3 times 14. And then finally there's 6 times 7. And so one of these numbers is going to need to be negative, and one of these numbers is going to need to be positive. And so then when I add them, I'm going to get negative 1 as an answer. So first of all, that means the negative number needs to be larger, so that when I add them, I get a negative result. And I need these two numbers to really have a difference of 1, because when I add a positive and a negative, I end up really just subtracting those numbers. And so we can see that that's going to be the case here with this 6 and 7. But this time it does matter where I put the 6 and where I put the 7, because I need the negative number to be larger so that when I add them, I'll get the negative result in the middle that I need. And so it's got to be minus 7 and plus 6. So this way I'll get the negative 7x when I multiply the outer pieces, but I'll get the positive 6x when I multiply the inner pieces, and then when I add them together, I'll get negative x as the result for the middle. And then of course, 6 times negative 7, we chose that in the first place because it would multiply to make negative 42. So at this point here, once we have it factored into these two sets of parentheses, we're going to do the same thing we've done on the previous examples. We're going to add or set each of these equal to 0, and then I'm going to solve each of these mini equations. I'm going to subtract 6, so I get x equals 0 minus 6 is negative 6, and then over here I add 7, and so I get x equals 7 as my second answer, and so I've got that one finished. For the last one in this set, we're again going to break it up into two sets of parentheses with x as the first piece in each set of parentheses, because when I remultiply, that'll get me back to my x squared. I'm multiplying to make negative 54. I'm adding to make 3, meaning I need two numbers that multiply to make negative 54, but add to make 3. And so again, I'm going to need a positive and a negative number. The only way I can multiply to make a negative is if I have one of each, a positive and a negative. And so now I just need to cycle through my options to multiply to make 54. So I've got 1 times 54. 54 is even, so I can divide it by 2. That's going to be 2 times 27. I can divide that by 3. That's 3 times 18. And if you need help with the calculator to find all these different options, you can use that. And then we've got 6 times 9. And so right there I'm going to pause. I can see that 6 times 9 is going to give me my negative 54 if one is negative and one is positive. But then I have a difference of 3 between those two numbers that'll give me the 3 that I need to have in the middle. Now this time I need the positive number to be bigger, because when I add the two numbers together I need the positives to win out. So this time it's going to be plus 9 and then minus 6. Again, that'll multiply to make the negative 54, but then when I add the 9x to the negative 6x, we'll get that positive 3x that we want in the middle. So I clear that out of the way. Now I'm ready to take each of these sets of parentheses and set them equal to 0. And so now to wrap things up, I subtract 9 from both sides. So I get x equals negative 9. And then over here, I can add 6 to both sides. So I got x equals 6. So I've got my two answers.